effect of drought on Kenyan endangered species. Let's bring in Frank Pope, CEO at Save the Elephant. He joins us via Zoom. Thank you so much for joining us, Frank. First off, we've heard from that report a lot about zebras. What more can you tell us about the drought's impact on elephants and other significant animal species, Frank?
Yeah, well, everything's really suffering right now in the drought. Elephants are probably the most resilient of all these species because they're so versatile in the kind of foods they can eat. They can eat the grass, they can eat leaves off trees, they can even eat the branches of many trees. So they are less impacted or less quickly impacted than the others. But in the end, everything succumbs when there's no water and when there's no food. So drought has typically been the biggest impactor of elephant populations over the centuries because elephants don't have many natural predators other than man. So we're definitely seeing the start of that now. And we're finding lots of abandoned calves. The elderly are just dying. We just lost one of our very cherished, very well-known animals from Samburu National Reserve in northern Kenya. She was a 60-year-old elephant called Monsoon, and she was actually euthanized by a vet yesterday because she had lost so much condition from the drought. So yeah, it's pretty bad.
Frank, what can be done? Because when it comes to farming, for instance, there's always the argument that some farmers can use irrigation, for instance, to continue, watering their crop. But with wildlife, what other solutions can there be to be able to sustain these animals?
Yeah, it's a really tricky one with the Grevy's zebra, which is such an endangered population, and it's so the existence of every individual is critical, and you have a hope of being able to feed those individuals with hay. It's very difficult to do a similar thing with elephants because they are so dispersed across the landscape, and if it would just it's a very logistically challenging thing to do. What people have sometimes tried to do in the past is create water points for elephants, but the data on that is pretty bad. It turns out to be in the long term a bad thing to do, to try and create a water point for wildlife. It was tried in the Kruger National Park in South Africa, and they've in fact spent a great deal of money now dismantling those artificial water points. Because what happens when you create a water point like that, you create a center of desertification, because all the wildlife come in, they finish all the food around their area, then all the cover is gone and the soil is blown away. And I think that's what we're seeing at the moment, is that we have a very severe drought in northern Kenya, but it's exacerbated not so much by climate change, which is presumably involved, but it's hard to tell quite how much. But the real amplifier of the lack of rain is the overgrazing. There's a great deal more pressure on a very fragile landscape up there at the moment, and there are many more livestock, many more small livestock, sheep and goats, and many more people pushing those goats and herding them in areas that they hadn't previously. So the soil is in a perilous state in northern Kenya. So I think everyone wants the rains to come and the grass to bounce back as well as they had done in the past, but it's unlikely that they will because the grass stock has been so depleted.
Well, Frank, my next question is a little bit difficult because I think it's anyone's guess at this point, but you would probably know a lot more and a lot better than I would. When do you expect the situation to change, if it will change, and how much worse do you think it would get before the rains and the pasture and the water supply stabilize?
Well, yeah, stabilization's a tricky concept because we have this shifting baseline, and when the rains come, they come with more fury. They wash away more soil. The erosion gullies get bigger. The rivers are getting wider and shallower, and the essential nutrients are being taken taken away. So there will be a recovery when the rains do come. But as I said, I think that they probably won't come back to the extent that they come back in the past year. The weather predictions are not looking very good for rains in October. We're traditionally due another rainy season in October, November, and then after that in April, May. And the long-range predictions for the sea surface temperatures in the Pacific, half a world away, but they're what determine these big-scale climatic cycles. Those surface currents are not looking favorable, and it looks like these La Nina conditions might persevere and might press on, and we might not see good rains in October. We might not even see them in April, May. So we're braced for some pretty grim times.
Not very good news, Frank, but thank you so much for all that and filling us in and giving us all those details. That was Frank Pope, and he was just speaking to us about the very dire situations in part of Kenya.